not just come on to the conference. We want it to be a part of the community. So how can you help? Tell others about Speak Black Man. We are looking for volunteers. We're always looking for people to help us with our socials, other things that we have, and we're always accepting financial grants. It can help with offsetting the cost for therapy for those who can't really afford therapy, for our community work. Your grants or your help would be really appreciated for helping with back to school gift that we give to young men and young people within the community to help with back to school. So all these things you can do to support us. You can, as I mentioned, follow on social media and also look out for upcoming events and share them with others. So for the 5th year, we have something amazing. So for the last 4 years, we've been meeting online. Next year is going to be our 5th year. And we want to have the 5th year anniversary celebration. So what we want to do, we want to meet in person. And we are thinking that next year, November, we won't have an online conference per se, but we will have an in-person conference, an in-person celebration. We are really considering whether to do it a hybrid way or just have it in person. We're still in the planning stage, but we know we want to meet you all in person. We want to celebrate the day. We want to have some succulent food. We want to award some people who have been of great contribution to us, and we also want to have a guest speaker to speak about the difficulties around mental health on that day. So if you can help us to think about location, if you want to sponsor us for that day, we'd really appreciate it. So reach out to us via email or social media if you want to get involved in our 5th year celebration. And on screen, you should see our account if you want to support us for that. We're in the planning stage, and we definitely want this dream to just become a reality, and you can be a part of that. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you being here. You could have been anywhere else, but you've chosen to be here to support Speak Black Man, and we are not taking it lightly. We really appreciate you. All the best, and I'll see you later on in the conference.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you. And a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, virtual round of applause for the work that Antonio has been doing over the last 4 years for the Speak Black Man Conference. I love that he has such a passion for our community. And he doesn't just have a talent and hide it away, but he wants to spread it and share it and make our communities better and make our lives better. So a round of applause for you, Antonio. And we support the vision, and we'll work as best as possible as a community to help you achieve and build this vision. Thank you so much. I have the pleasure now of introducing you to our first speaker. And just before I introduce him, I'm just going to say that we'll take questions after each presentation. So you can start, you can type your questions in the chat, and then we'll have 5-minute question and answers with each speaker after they have presented. So I have the pleasure now of introducing you to someone who I know very, very well. He's a friend and brother, Lamar Russell. He's a man of God, a devoted husband and a father. He's a best-selling children's author, a community activist, entrepreneur, educator, youth leader, mentor, mental health first aider, and a finalist for the Community Hero Excellence Awards. Additionally, he has been nominated 3 times for the Role Model of the Year. Lamar is known for being a true inspiration and a positive advocate for youth. Drawing from his own personal experiences and struggles while growing up, he presents his life as an open book, sharing dynamic and inspiring messages that resonate with people across all backgrounds. Ladies and gentlemen, Lamar Russell will present to us today on overcoming trauma, from trauma to triumph. Lamar, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you, bro.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope that you're keeping well. I just want to say a massive thank you to Antonio, just for inviting me on this amazing platform, Survive to Thrive SpeakBlackMan Conference. For me, Antonio is an amazing friend, a role model, and just someone we need in our community that's really, shifting minds and changing lives. So thank you so much for just having me on this platform to share my experience with you. So I'm going to share my lived experience of the immense trauma I've had in my life and how I overcame them and went from trauma to triumph. So from my early childhood, I'm going to start with, I was raised in a broken home. So I went through abuse from my stepdad. So it was me, my mum, and my older brother that I used to live with when I was younger. Experienced a lot of abuse from my stepdad, who used to beat us. Seen my mum getting beaten up every day. And this lasts for about 4 years of my life where, seeing my mum getting beaten, thrown down the stairs. I remember when at the time my stepdad broke my nose and I was just a little boy. And so that happened for quite a while. My oldest brother, who is 12 years older than me, was always wrestling with him back and forth. And my older brother was like the protector in my life at the time. My sister's 6 years older, so she used to get abused as well. And it was really tough growing up. Obviously, my biological father weren't around, so I didn't, have any positive role models in my life. It was, only male that I used to see in my life was a monster to me. So I grew up as an angry black boy, throughout school, just very angry. I remember a lot of the teachers trying to get me help, but I generally didn't know why I was angry. When you're growing up, you don't really think about trauma. You don't identify it. So yeah, I was growing up with a lot of trauma in my life. And at the age of 18, my older brother went jail for about 10 years. So I had to make the decision, to be the man and step up in my family at such a young age. And my older brother for me at the time was a role model. And to see what trauma done for him really made me open my eyes and think, do I want to go down the same route as my brother did? My brother ended up doing 12 years behind bars. So he missed out a lot of my childhood. And for me, that was a pivotal moment in my life where I was in school, high school, growing up, and I decided, I was going down that same route my brother was going down. And I just really, really wanted to just identify like where is this stemming from. And, eventually I ended up getting the help that I needed. At the age of 18, I got baptized. And that was a pivotal moment in my life where, it's just the best feeling ever. And although I had a lot of trauma, I had to really, really just sit down and see where I wanted to go down in life. And the first thing I would say is, when you're dealing with trauma, the change has to come from within. So I was getting the help that I needed, but at the same time, I weren't really taking it in because you have to be an open vessel. You have to allow, your situation you have to allow things to happen. So for me, I had to make that conscious decision to make that change within and just go back to my childhood where I was such a angry black boy. I remember I got kicked out of high school. And my life was really, really, rocky. And I remember getting up to no good when I was a teenager. Went on the route of selling drugs before I met Christ. Um, a lot of gang pressure, would I say, see my friends getting killed. So for me, it was just like that turning point at 18 where I had to make that decision where if I wanted to go down that route where my friends and my brother went down, or I wanted to make a platform for myself and be different and not be a statistic. So yeah, I identified the traumas in my life. And for me, trauma can show up in our lives later in the form of emotional wounds because they're invisible. And as I said, change comes from within. So it is important that whatever you're going through, you have to take that time out to make changes within so you can get that help that you need. So eventually when I got baptized at 18, I had to, really, really go to God and ask God for the changes that I need in my life. I surrounded myself with, people that will help me. And yeah, so eventually made those changes in my life. And it's funny because I was reading the other day the stats of men that are from broken homes are more likely to enter the prison system. Also, Black men are less likely to get married and be a present father. And can I just say, I haven't entered the prison system, and I am now a present father in my child's life, and also a husband to my beautiful wife. And yeah, it's just a testament to myself in terms of the changes that I had to make within, and just allowing God to use me and being the man that He's called me to be. Also, trauma creates change you don't choose. Healing is about creating change you do choose. So I'll say that again. Trauma creates change you don't choose. Healing is about creating change you do choose. And now, going on today, I set up youth organizations across London, in Buckinghamshire now where I live, impacting thousands of young people that were in my shoes, growing up from trauma, going into prisons now and talking to young boys. And, really just allowing my life to be an open book and open up to many young people that are in my shoes that, couldn't get the help that they need, and just being there, a pivotal person in my community, helping, Black men and also Black females, becoming who they need to be in life, and letting them see that the greatness is within, despite where you're from, despite, your background, where you've grown up, there's greatness inside all of us. And it's about, helping them see where they have come from and, where they want to get to in life. And yeah, so that's my story. And yeah, thank you for listening in.
Perfect. Perfect. I can see the screens lighting up with round of applause. A round of applause, everyone, for that very deep and honest first story of from trauma to triumph from Lamar Russell. We're so proud of you, Lamar, and there's so much greater that's ahead for you. So keep doing what you're doing and keep being an example to your son and to the young men that you interact with daily. I know there is so many of them. I'm still getting a feedback. Someone's on, I'm not sure who. I know you interact with so many young men on a daily basis, and I know the kind of light that you shine is impacting their lives as well. So you're making an impact. And like we always say to each other, if it's even one person, life will be changed by the life that you live. So a round of applause for you. Congratulations. We're also proud of you. Do we have any questions for Lamar? We have 5 minutes to ask questions. I can see in the chat from Eileen Rose, you're an amazing young man, Lamar. Thank you for your courage, generosity, and consideration of others in sharing your story. I pray God continues to bless you richly in all you do. from Elton saying a tremendous example to many. And Harriet saying there is greatness in all of us. Let me see. Question from Paul Etoka. How long it took for you to overcome this trauma?
It took me a very long time. I said my childhood, so grew up very angry. So when I got baptized, I had to ask God to deliver me from, being an angry person and really just allowing Him to do, His work in my life. So it took me all of my childhood, and yeah, so up until I was about 19 years old.
I see Chris, you have your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Thank you. Lamar, great story, and I love that. How did you go about sharing your mental health struggles with your family members and closest male friends?
To be honest, I didn't at all. So I think that's when I got baptized at the age of 18. I opened up to, people, good men and good people around me, basically, because I didn't trust no one really. So, I got a really, really good circle around me that I opened up to, and they gave me the right counsel and support. And some of them are on here today, and really changed my life for the better.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Question in the chat from Harriet. What are some steps you took to overcome trauma?
So first, identifying that I had trauma. A lot of people don't, know why they do certain things. So whether it's that lashing out or, some people don't identify it. So I had to identify, why I was such an angry boy growing up. And then from when I identify it, as I said, I had to make that change within myself and, reach out to certain people that, counselors, therapists, and yeah, just allowing to, for changes in my life, whether that's therapy, myself, just, yeah, making those steps to change.
Great. Thank you. Question here from Paul. I think it's a follow-up. How old are you now, if you want to reveal that?
26.
Okay, perfect. Sharnet is asking, how long did you have therapy or counseling for?
For about, since I was, so it was open to me when I was in school, primary school, all the way up until I was, so even my 20s, I got therapy and counseling. And what I missed out is because, when I found my wife, I didn't want to bring that into my marriage. So I had to get the right support and help to have a happy marriage and a happy home.
Great. Janet is asking, what tools were used to overcome the trauma? How do you deal with the trigger?
Good question. So yeah, the tools that I manage, as I said, I keep saying God. It was only God, because I understand when I look at the stats, I shouldn't be in this position. About 90% of males that are from broken homes are in jail. So as I said, going back, change has to come from within. So that was the main tool. A lot of people don't want to make changes in their life because they're scared of, the outcome. But I just let everything flow and yeah, just was an open book and just decided to just change my life around.
Great. I'm going to take two more questions so that we don't have Lamar for very long. So, question here. You mentioned changing your surrounding or people you are around. What relationships do you feel were key for your healing journey?
So yeah, even like us as being around good people, I was around, gang members a lot. So being able to just get away from that at the age of 19, I actually moved to America for 4 years on a football scholarship. So, you know, my whole environment changed, and just really getting closer to God in those times helped a lot.
Final question. You're a best-selling children's author. You've written a book called Young King, and you have another one called Young Queen. What does a young Black king look like? And also, what message do you want to give to young people who, like you, have experienced trauma and cannot see a way out of their circumstance?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll go with the first one. I tell all my young people to look in the mirror, whether it's a, you know, girl or boy. I always tell them to look in the mirror, and you have to see yourself as a king or queen, because society will want to tell you you look different or want to paint you as something else. But I say you have to look in the mirror, and you have to see yourself as a king or queen. You have to see yourself valuable. And yeah, that's how I get through to a lot of them, is by changing their mindset. And it's about what they think about themselves, and it's not about what anyone else thinks. So yeah, what's the next question? Sorry.
The first part of the question was, what does a young Black king look like to you?
Yeah, so I answered that in terms of them seeing how they, you know, they look, in terms of it's up to them, it's up to all of us to decide, you know, who we are in life. So changing their mindset, whatever they've been told, whatever they've been brought up hearing, it's about them, and, you know, shifting their mindset to who they see themselves as.
Okay, perfect. We're going to leave it there. There's some other questions in the chat for you. Feel free to personally respond to those people. But thank you so much, Lamar. Again, I'm personally proud of you. And I know everyone that's on here as well, the 81 people who've just listened to your story, are incredibly proud of the man that you have become and the trauma that you have overcome to reach to where you are now, and to also continue to change the lives of other young men that you come in contact with. So well done. Round of applause for Lamar. Again, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Lamar. And from one great presentation, from one great person to another, I have known this woman for a number of years, and she's a dynamo. She's a dynamo. And so I have the pleasure of introducing you to our next speaker, Tishana Mullings. Tishana is a social development practitioner and edutainment extraordinaire. She genuinely believes that we have the power to change the world when we are equipped to tap into our God-given talents. Tishana uses her voice and experience to train, coach, and consult with individuals, groups, and organizations to develop action plans for positive change. Tishana serves as the Chief Success Officer at the Next Step Lifelong Educational Services and is a multi-award winning social practitioner. She's a named community hero from Jamaica Yellow Pages in 2022, gained the Prime Minister Youth Award, 30 Under 30 Top Caribbean Leader, 2019 Shevening Scholar, gained the Governor General Medal of Honor for National Development through social impact in supporting an existing programs of King's House and the Governor General's Program of Excellence, amongst many others. Tishana has overcome many obstacles to become a beacon of change. Like I said, she's a dynamo, and it's our pleasure to have Tishana Mullings all the way from Jamaica, from St. Thomas, Jamaica, joining us for this virtual Speak Black Man conference. And she'll be talking about overcoming depression from trial to triumph. Tishana, welcome.
Just unmute. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Arroyo. Thank you so much, Speak Black Man family. If you love the Speak Black Man family, I'd like to see some hearts in the chat. If you are excited to be a part of this family, because indeed this is a family. Arroyo is my chevening brother. So that's for those who may not know, that's a scholarship where people from all over the world, not just young people, get to travel to the UK to study for a master's degree and hopefully return to their countries to inspire change and transformation in the areas that they lead. Now, I've been a part of the Speak Black Man family since year one. I've been to every single one of the conferences, right? I'd like to know in the chat if it's your first, second, or third year. Let's just see what's going on in the Speak Black Man family here. So if it's your first year, just put a number 1. We welcome to the family. If it's your second year, you're doing it twice. That means something is happening. This is my third year and I'm on stage. Thank you so much for honoring me, Antonio, and the entire Speak Black Man family. You'd have heard my introduction. And today, one of the strengths that I have, I consider it a strength. I'm very comfortable with vulnerability, right? So I'm very happy to share my story. I recently, and Antonio doesn't know this, he's a brother and friend, but I am a full-time social development practitioner who runs my own organization, teaching critical life skills from the primary level right up to corporate. And this is what I've been doing for 14 years. But I recently took on a role. I'm the executive director of the Lupus Foundation in Jamaica. I started on November 1. So that has me supporting another vulnerable group and working with that group. But to get here, it started in Blacksmith Lane, Seaford, St. Thomas, which is a rural community. I think St. Thomas in general is a rural parish in Jamaica. Now, a lot of things are happening there, and there's a lot of advocacy that I would have engaged in as a teenager. And you know where that advocacy started from? I didn't understand myself. I didn't know why I was on earth. I was struggling with low self-esteem issues. In my family, I was called words like simple and slight. So if you wanted to find one of the young people in the family who would know what to do if you gave them a task, it would not have been me. I was pretty much the silliest one in the family. That's how I was seen in my own family, right? And then when I looked around me in the parish where I was from, I saw lots of social issues. When I traveled to other parishes, people tell me that where I'm from is behind the world and nobody great comes from that place. So that's where trauma started for me, right? So when I was given the topic from trial to triumph, it wasn't just a nice topic to have been given, but the Dawsons, they know my story because while I was living in the UK, I would have spent a lot of time with that family and at their church. So they know that they saw the story, they saw the trials that I was living through, because the deepest and darkest time of my life was while I was in the UK. So I want to share with you this journey of becoming a social development practitioner that started from a place of trauma. So what I want to do is to share my personal story, the mental health challenges that I've navigated and I'm still navigating while remaining resilient, purposeful, and evolving out of my struggles, and in a healthy way, engaging many populations and communities, helping them to learn and grow through their trauma. So I'm literally walking you through my journey. It's a long story, but every long story can be shortened. So that's what I'm going to aim to do. There's a program I was involved in Jamaica called Conversations for Greatness. It was run by an institution here called the Jamaica Money Market Brokers, JMMB. And in Conversations for Greatness, we used to say this term, listen from your life. So I'm telling this story, but I'm telling this story for Chris and Oriah and Lamar and everybody on this call, Russell and Danielle. I'm not telling this story just so Leisha and Alma can hear my story, but so that you, Wade, Noreen, Howard, all of you can see areas in your life that you can, transform positively. And we don't exist in a vacuum. We have family, we have friends, we are social beings, we're connected. So how we can use our experiences to also show up as more valuable human beings for the persons around us. So just a little bit of statistics. So 16% of Black people in the US have experienced a mental illness, and this is what was recorded. Of course, you know how statistic goes. Sometimes it's to the favor of who is putting out the statistics. I know that's a risky thing to say, but guess what? I've just said it, right? And there's limited access to mental health resources and societal stigma about seeking help and support, right? While I was in the UK, that's where I went to therapy for the very first time in my life. And as a girl who would have lived such a traumatic life, growing up through various forms of abuse, some that I've never shared with the public before, my mother that I now love so much, we have a story where our lives have transformed. Somebody's annotating on the screen here, if we can control that, please, on the back end. Yeah, so let's control the screen, please. Kalicia, somebody in the back end. All right, so to avoid distraction, let me stop sharing for a moment so we don't get distracted. So if you can stop annotations in the back end, please. So let me share again to see if we are now clear and good to go again. All righty. All right. Just a moment. So you can keep putting your questions and comment in the chat. So let's get going again. All right. So just give me a thumbs up if you're seeing my screen again. One person can at least give me a yes. Give me a yes.
Seeing you, but not your presentation. So
Oh, seeing me, but not my presentation. All right. All right. All right. I think we're now rocking and rolling again, are we?
very soon. If you click present, we will now see your full presentation.
All right.
We're all ready to get into this.
All right. 1 second. One moment. Just that's a quick pause here.
That's all right. Let's wait for you to load that presentation. While you get it up, ladies and gentlemen, you can still start thinking about the questions that you would have for Tishana, hearing that amazing story of someone who has experienced depression but didn't even realize that that's what was happening in their life, and only to come to the realization, having moved away from your country years after experiencing depression, and for that light to shine, and then going through receiving help in a country that is even new to you. It must have been something for Tishana to have experienced that. You can all post your own stories in the chat if that has been your experience. Some of us have had to go through it through childhood and not recognize what we're dealing with. And it's only in adulthood, when we've come to full realization of ourselves, that we're able to then find some sort of help that would help to say to us, you know what, this is exactly why you're like this. This is the help that you need, and people in our lives to signpost us to the right areas for help. So let's see what has been your story. Tishana is back. We can see her presentation. But while she's back, to continue from where she left off, coming to the UK and for the first time going to therapy, put your stories in the chat and tell us how you first recognized that you were dealing with depression. Back to you, Tishana.
Thank you so much, Araya. And I think this is a good demonstration of how life is, right? You're going along, things are going well, you're flowing, everything's awesome, and then boom, something hits, somebody starts writing on your wall, you know, it gets in your brain and you're like, whoa, I need to get myself back together. And sometimes you have to take a pause, get yourself together and go again, because there's also this concept, toxic positivity, where people say, go, 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 go all the time. There are times when you have to stop. You have to get it together. You have to erase those things that have been written on your wall and then go again, right? So that's very, very important. Black individuals are 20% more likely to experience mental health disorders like major depressive disorder, yet they're often underserved. Now, there are lots of programs and initiatives to change this. For example, Speak Black Man. And as you can see, it's called Speak Black Man, but I don't know if Antonio is going to have a Speak Black Woman, or maybe it's your wife that I'm giving the challenge. But as you can see, we're all gleaning and growing from the Speak Black Man platform. And this feeds nicely into something that was a big theme last year about generational trauma on this same conference, where trauma is passed from one generation to the next through biochemical changes affecting gene expression. So this is a real thing. I learned about generational trauma at the SpeakBlackMan Conference, right? And as a social development practitioner, I can see how that is manifesting when we're trying to empower communities and break cycles of hardship, and you're not getting a breakthrough. And you realize that because of this collective traumatic experience, it becomes hard to move some communities. So just that understanding has helped me to become more effective in my work as we look at how we can heal generational trauma. If you're trying to deal with drug abuse, you're trying to deal with spousal abuse, a lot of what feeds into these kinds of behaviors is generational trauma. I was told a lot that I wasn't good enough, as you're seeing in this picture demonstrated. Then I feel like I genuinely felt like I was stupid, right? It was when I realized what was happening to me and the cycles in my generation, then I started this narrative of love. And I was able to love my mom and love any other abuser in my life, and then turn around and teach them the concept of love. And now my mom is the ultimate defender of my peace. My mom, who was my main abuser, from verbal abuse to physical abuse, she would pretty much beat with anything she found. Whatever was closest to her hand, that's what she would beat with. I still have scars now which are a reminder of one beating or another beating, right? But through all of that, I'm able to fully and truly forgive, right? Now, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorders, with anxiety disorder and ADHD. Upon that diagnosis, first of all, let me tell you very briefly what led me to the diagnosis. I was trying to study for a master's degree in development, admin, and planning. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I left a business in Jamaica. The person I left with the business robbed some money, a few $1 million, messed things up. I came to the UK on the heels of losing my dad, losing the relationship with the person I thought I was going to marry. So it was just lots of losses. I had a car accident about 5 months before coming to the UK. So I was walking around with a whole lot of trauma. Lest I speak about all the trauma from childhood, I was a tearful teenager, right? When there wasn't an argument in my house, I would walk lightly, because you could step too hard and it would be an argument, right? So on top of that historic trauma and all the current trauma, I was trying to study for a master's degree and trying to figure out why it wasn't working. Why was all my papers late? Why wasn't I functioning in the UK context? And one of my lecturers picked all of that up and sent me to therapy. Now, therapy was the healing that would have allowed me to understand my trauma and then learn the methods and the strategies to heal, or to begin the process of healing, because healing is a long-term process. So since we're focusing on the testimonial and the strategies to move forward, I don't need to spend too long to talk about major depressive disorder, consistent low mood, loss of interest. I was close to the Dawsons. They know that I would have done a surgery on the heels of all of that. Facing isolation at some points in the UK, feeling like I'm running a marathon with weights on my ankles, feeling like I'm walking against a wind. So I'm trying to move forward because I'm the type that always wants to move forward, but felt like a wind was pushing me back. So I'm usually very active on social media. I disappeared for several months, and being a quasi celebrity in Jamaica, lots of people know me. So everybody was wondering, where's Tishana? We don't see her on TV. We don't see her on social media. We knew she went for a scholarship, but she kind of just disappeared after a point in the scholarship. So sometime after my surgery, after several counseling sessions during therapy, this was the first post I came back out with. God gave me a peek. My future looks great in 2021 in the UK. I made it through surgery. I made it through depression and anxiety. I defeated fear. I dealt with grief. I cursed lack, and I declared I am rich. And that rich didn't just mean wealth and money. It meant, well, it didn't just mean money. It meant a collective wealth, because I could feel myself coming back. I was happy that I was able to uncover the trauma and all the skeletons in my closet that I was walking around with without realizing. And I was so happy that I made it to 2021, because in 2020, I felt like I was going to lose it. I felt like at point, anxiety caused me to have breathing challenges. I would have gone to bed worrying if I was going to wake up the next day, and afraid to tell my friends and family that's how I felt, because I didn't want them to worry too much, right? And that just caused the anxiety to keep getting worse. And then I couldn't understand why I couldn't keep focused on any one task. The moment I focused on one thing, my brain will turn on, and several thoughts and everything else that I needed to do kept on just running around in my brain every time I tried to focus on any one thing. Now let's talk about some of the things that I learned from that experience and how it has strengthened my practice as a social development practitioner. Epigenetics and the science of healing. Trauma affects gene expression. So that understanding led me on a journey to heal my family and to help them to understand what we were experiencing, so we could change the narratives, so that we could enable a new legacy. I said before that my mother is now the ultimate defender of my peace. She's able to be a better mother, right? So some of those things that have been wired, we are unwiring, if I can make that term up. So trauma often inscribes itself into a record. And when you start changing the scripts, changing the narratives, we realize that healing is not just for us, but it's for those who come after us. A lot of people hold on to not forgiving their parents because it was so bad. But now that I've forgiven my parent, because my dad is no longer with us, she's able to give me so much love that helps in my process of healing. She will now be a much better grandmother to my children. So we are re-engineering the cycle. So we have started a positive cycle of love that my children will benefit from, that their children will benefit from, that my mom is now experiencing. Now, as I try to move closer to a wrap-up, somatic memory. Trauma that the body stores affects our physical reactions, even when the man is not consciously recalling the trauma. I remember in 2022, I made a commitment that year to not talk about my trauma, because I would have spoken a lot about it in therapy. Every time I meet somebody and they say, you're great, I would say, but you don't know the trauma I went through. So I kept on repeating the trauma. So I made a commitment that year to speak positivity. And if I met somebody that could do something that could heal a section of my trauma, I would focus on the thing that they could do to help with my healing. That was a transformational year. I stopped repeating the trauma. Now I can share the story here without feeling the emotions and all the things that would have been awakened in my body when I talk about the stories. If I talk about when my mother and I was in this abusive cycle, it's with joy that we're now in a new place. It doesn't awaken what I used to feel when I would have spoken about those stories. And that's a sign that I'm at a very mature state in my healing, recognizing that this has reinforced my commitment to body-centered approaches in social development, understanding that healing must consider both the mind and the body, which is why when I'm engaging groups, I'm very conscious about the space that we're meeting in, Are they in a community or in a space that caused them to recall their trauma? So as a social development practitioner, I'm so much more sharper because I've dealt with my trauma. I'm almost at the end. So neuroplasticity, I think if you're a mental health enthusiast, it's very likely that you'd have heard this term before about our brain's capacity to create new neural pathways. That's what we would have done in our family. So there was a time when we didn't talk to each other for 2-3 weeks, and that would be normal. Now, if we don't hear from each other for a day, it's like, have you forgotten that I love you? You know what I mean? It's just so much love, and it is now normalized. We had a normal where we didn't speak to each other, and once they know you're alive, no one cares. Now, if 2 days pass, we don't hear each other, it's almost alarming, right? And that's something we were able to work on as a family, creating these new neural pathways. Want to also say that CBT, yes, you go to your therapist and you have CBT counseling, but it's also something that we can practice on our own. What thoughts are you thinking? I shared that year when I decided I'm going to replace with a positive thought every time the negative comes up. I know the stories. I don't need to share these stories with every single person that I meet every single time, right? And even now when I tell my stories from a different perspective, what can you do? How does it make you feel? Some of the things I didn't do as a child, I started going to Taekwondo, I started going to the gym, I started going to Latin dancing, all the things I wanted to do as a child that I didn't do, I started doing those things for myself. I can't go back to 10-year-old and do it, but at 30, I'm able to pay my money and get it done for myself, right? Emotions, what we feel and how it affects us. I could say a lot more about CBT, but I won't. Finally, practice mindfulness. It roots us into the present, helping us to manage our overwhelming emotions. And in a time when social media, the mainstream media, there's always somebody talking and saying something into our ears, it's very important to practice mindfulness, just pause in the storm. If you're working in a very busy environment, sometimes just going to the restroom, taking a 5 minutes just to center yourself to say, okay, this is a crazy day, it's a bit chaotic. What is in my power? What is in my control is this. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to get this done. Sometimes in the midst of the storm, presence over panic is important. Breathe, reclaim control over anxiety. Take it from someone who is battling ADHD and trying to do my best. Bring your community around you. Just yesterday, I was driving around during lunchtime, couldn't find somewhere to have lunch and was having a trigger. I called a church sister. She said, guess what? I'm having lunch at this place. I said, guess what? I'm joining you. When I got there, I realized I had no cash. They only take cash. She paid for my lunch. And my joy meter went pop all the way up. And I got back to work. It was almost like the slump that I went into didn't happen. So in that moment, instead of struggling alone, use your social capital. I was guilty of saying, I have nobody. That's not true. If you think hard enough, there are people that are there. If it's even go through your phone. If you have 10 contacts, out of these 10 contacts, if I should call one of these persons to say I need support, which one would I call? We have more support than we think we have. I think my time is up, Oriel. So I'm gonna hope that these last 2 slides, I probably can use them to answer a question that might come my way. Is that all right?
That's fine. I think you will be able to. So thank you. You powered through this like only Tishana Mullings could. Despite the setback, you powered through this, and we're absolutely so honored to have had you on this afternoon for the Speak Black Man Conference. You're empowering. Your life story is amazing, and there's so much greatness ahead for you. Trust me on that. So keep going on. There's some questions in the chat. Round of applause, everyone, for Tishana. Round of applause, virtual round of applause for Tishana. Let's see how many of these questions we can get through, Tishana, in the next 5 minutes. And I'm sure probably your next 2 slides or so will be able to answer some of these as well. Augustus is asking, what modality of therapy did you engage with?
It would have been CBT. So I got therapy through my university, and we had 10 sessions. And just to give a little bit of color, because I was presenting with so many issues, grief from my father's death, breakup of a relationship, couldn't function academically, didn't know ADHD was a challenge that was causing that. I was trying to manage the process while I was the client. I was trying to give the therapist context when I would talk about Caribbean stuff. I will be telling my therapist what that means in the Caribbean context. I'd be trying to get my therapist to help me to focus on at least one of the issues, because we can't solve all my 5 issues or so on that I was presenting with. But what I felt like I came away from therapy with was an understanding of what was driving the depression and the challenges that I was having. So because I was able to understand, we were able to come up with strategies to change behavior. That is what would have inspired, like, stop regurgitating your trauma over and over. Some of these were not obviously directly said by the therapist, but based on my therapist's guidance, I was able to implement these practices that would have helped with my turnaround. And like on screen here, we have a healthy compartmentalization. Yes, hell was breaking loose in Jamaica. Yes, COVID came. I had a degree to finish. All of these things were happening. But in order for me to function, I had to compartmentalize. That's one of the things that I learned, just separate. So with my business, I just laid off everybody that was functioning locally and decided, when I come to Jamaica, I'll get my business up again. Let me finish this master's degree. So that's one of the things that I learned coming out of therapy.
Perfect. Janet is asking, what is the approach taken to show others how to love from brokenness? And are individuals up for it, you think?
It takes a lot of selflessness and a strength to have compassion for somebody, like in my case, who was an abuser. So to have compassion for an abuser, it took me 20 sessions of therapy, because I did therapy with another therapist in the US, because I said to my mentor beforehand, when I come back to Jamaica and I'm experiencing this reverse culture shock, I feel like I'm going to fall into depression again. That's what I told my mentor. And my mentor paid for another round of counseling, another round of therapy for me. And it's out of that I gained the strength to love my mother, who was my main abuser. I would have said to her, for example, Mom, I have to find the right moment, because I'm not saying any of this is easy, right? You have to know who you're dealing with, the moment to engage them, how to engage them. I engage my mother with love. I would have said to her, because I love you, I can't receive you calling me names, because I respect you so much and you are my mother. I can't see that coming out of my mother. And I would say to her, when this or that is said, it makes me feel this way. I want to love you, Mom. If the same mom that is railing and abusing, and I'm saying, I want to love you. Find the best moment. Wait for a birthday party when you're at dinner. It can be done, but there's a great deal of selflessness, desire for change, understanding the particular person that you're dealing with and the realities surrounding that particular person, because no generic one-size-fits-all will work. And I'll tell you, I was in a job where I was working with one of the most tumultuous bosses, and I took the route of defending that boss like they were the best person to me ever. And that person developed a love and respect for me that is unimaginable. Everybody asked me, how did you do that, right? It wasn't the same. It was a similar strategy to what I used with my mom, but it wasn't the same. So you have to learn who you're dealing with, the situations around them, and just try different things to engage them. I have fun sometimes with ChatGPT. I'll go to ChatGPT and say, I am dealing with a very difficult person. When I'm speaking to them, they always overtalk me. I've tried this and this and it didn't work. Give me 4 strategies that I can try to engage that person. Amazing.
When we come to the end of this, we're probably going to find out if ChatGPT is going to replace therapists in a few years. But let's not go there. Let's not go there right now. Here's a question for you from Chris, and sensitive one. Did you have a white therapist? And if so, how did you manage the cultural aspect of that?
That's a very funny question, because I was listening to my therapist's voice, because my therapist was online. So after about session 2, I knew my therapist was Black. I just knew there were certain references and ways that she engaged that just made me know it was a Black therapist. So, and my therapist from the US was also a Black therapist. They were both Black women. So never had the experience with a white therapist.
I'm going to take 2 more questions, okay? How did the trauma show up in your body?
So many ways. Tightness in my chest that I couldn't explain. I also realized that whenever I was around anyone that related to that trauma, even if they were not a direct abuser like my sister. So when I came back to Jamaica, I decided I was not going to live at home because I wanted to be in a different space. I didn't want to be in the home where I was beaten and abused and dragged in the rain and all of that, because I realized that was affecting my healing process. But when my sister would come to Kingston, where I now live, even though she wasn't an abuser, because she was my sister that lived there, when she didn't want to wash the dishes and do anything, I had to do all the work. So even though she didn't directly abuse me, she related to my trauma. So I realized that when she came around, even if she was sitting in my car, especially if she didn't give me notice before coming and she wanted to just be in my space, I would feel my chest tightening. And sometimes I would ask her, I would say, you can't come this time, you can, and she couldn't understand. And I had to explain to her, I love you. It's not your fault, but because you were in the space, and I had to explain to her to understand. I said, come next week, Wednesday. It would be a much better time, but right now, I do need some space, because the chest tightening was very, very bad. And then I realized I also developed a breathing challenge, did several female executives, all kind of things. And then when it comes to sleeping, I would sleep for 10 hours and wake up feeling like I need to go to bed right now. So there was also a sleeping challenge. Some of those things I'm still working through, but I do things like daytime naps and all that to just keep myself balanced. And as you can see, I'm very energetic. Even when I try to control it. Once I'm in an audience, I get very energetic. So like after this, I have my come down time, I relax, I drink some water. Sometimes I lay down. I like listening to gong music. So let's say I come in late at 7 o'clock, but I have some stuff that I must finish for tomorrow.
What's gong music for our audience?
Well, YouTube it. Gong sound. So it's an instrument that they use and they kind of knock it and it makes these sounds. And the sounds are very relaxing. So I will play that and I will lay down for like 30 minutes to just kind of collect myself, relax and be mindful, and then put in an hour of work and go to bed.
All right, let's go to the final question because we need to move on quickly. And then we thank you so much. Daryl is asking, think back to that tearful teenager you were. What would you say to her now?
Wow, that's a big question. I would say to her, Tishana, press through this moment so that you can meet who you are becoming. I know it's hard to see right now based on everything that's going on around you, all the chaos, but I promise there's a brighter future for you, and I want you to press through, right? I would have taught her this term on the screen, anti-fragility, thriving through adversity, becoming stronger, not just resilient. Resilient is when you just push through the thing, but look at what you're learning. You're learning to love. You're learning how to handle challenges. You are learning empathy. You're learning patience. You're learning to love the unlovable. You're learning self-awareness. You can't see those lessons now, but these are the things you're learning. It's going to make you a powerful woman. It's going to impact how you show up for girls and men and the people that she wouldn't have known. I guess this would be prophetic for those who are Christians, right? I wouldn't have known then that I was going to be working with young people in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Morocco. I wouldn't have known then that I would be writing a document about working with community groups in the UK and how to train them in leadership training. That document that I wrote that I had written for the Ubele Initiative is now adapted, and it's been used in terms of how to train Black infrastructure plus organization as they care for communities. So today, I'm so glad that I would have found my way through talking to a guidance counselor while I was doing A-levels. I didn't even talk to her. I was sitting on her step, and let me summarize this story in 1 minute, I promise. I was sitting on the guidance counselor's step because I didn't have the words to say I need help. She saw me and she said, can you go to the UNICEF Child Researcher competition with the head girl? I just need a second person. She just wanted me to move away from there, really. I did it fearfully, and I won Best Orator. I didn't know what the word orator meant. I Googled it several times because I couldn't believe nobody had ever acknowledged me for anything. So that is how I thought, oh, speaking can be a real thing. It could be a career. And that out of that experience is how I found myself. And I turned around from that tearful teenager who felt like she had nothing to give to the world to realizing that even though I couldn't sing or dance, I could talk. And that could be what my career is that would have taken me all over the world. And I would have now become the social development practitioner that I am. It was a pleasure sharing with you. The Dawsons, Antonio, you know how much I love you on the SpeakBlackMan platform. I hope I have money to fly to the UK, or you bring it to Jamaica. SpeakBlackMan. Thank you so much, everybody. My sincere pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Tishana. Thank you, Tishana. And ladies and gentlemen, just help me, a round of applause for Tishana for that really, really, really awesome presentation and sharing her life journey with us. So truthfully,
I'm going to step out the way, but I will go through the chat to see if there's anything we weren't able
that
to
you can answer. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. We're proud of you. I see the relationship that you have with your mom and your sister, and it's a testimony to what you've been able to overcome and achieve and put aside to bring that love and joy, and it shines through. So good job, and keep pressing on, Thank you, Tishana Mullings, and we're way past the time for our next speaker, so apologies, Augustus, but we've enjoyed that so much, and I know there's so much more to come. So thank you for your patience, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I hope you are loving what we've been receiving so far. Our next speaker is Augustus Reed, and he'll be talking to us about overcoming multi-dimensional trauma. So Augustus is currently a second-year PhD student in counseling studies, working within the School of Health and Social Science at the University of Edinburgh. He's also a writer, poet, and an aspiring holistic therapist. He's interested in researching the Black British male experience and how they seek, access, and embody emotional support and healing. Augustus has experience facilitating men's group whilst living in Scotland, and he has found these spaces to be a crucial part of his own continuous healing. He believes these types of safe spaces are paramount for Black British men specifically. Furthermore, he's interested in creating these safe spaces for Black men to connect with themselves and other Black men through the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu, I am because we are. Connection through discussion, conversation, through deep, meaningful reasoning, and the embrace of Black male collective. Augustus has resisted the resistance and containment of what he terms as the colonial concrete jungle. From experiencing imprisonment, mental health detention, multidimensional trauma, significant family bereavement, friends dying due to gun violence and suicide, to being a staunch advocate, supporter of, and altruistic participant in the healing journey of others. Ladies and gentlemen, Augustus Reed.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. And please excuse my voice is a bit coarse, 'cause I've got a bit of a cough. So yes. And thank you, Antonio, for allowing space for me to unearth my voice, but more so for the Black male to unearth their voice. These spaces are very, very well needed. So thank you very much. Hello to everybody who's attended. Thank you for attending. I'm going to speak about basically the synopsis, what the host had just read out, and I'll begin by sharing my screen. Just spare me a moment. And first and foremost, I'd like to literally honor my ancestors, those who have shaped me, the person I am today. Oh, well, sorry. And that is Mary Louise Reed, Klaus Melbourne Reed, Una Delicia White, Ashai Dogie, Christopher Hansen, Junior Reed, Damien Hansel, Tony Hansen, Delroy Jackson, Paul Carter, Cousin Richie, Charlie Gordon, Nathaniel Robinson. I walk in the footprints behind the lingering words and the empowering heartbeats of our ancestors. I am because they are. I'd like to begin right here. And the picture you can see is my grandmother on the left-hand side, Mary Louise Reed, and the one in the middle is me and my mum, Pauline White. And the black and white photo is of West Bromwich High Street, where I come from, in the 1980s. All of these are significant because before the age of 14, I really don't remember a lot of experiences. So it was really nostalgic to have these up. It all started when I was 14 years old. I experienced a lot of traumas, but my grandma died when I was 14. We moved away from West Bromwich to Smethwick when I was 14. When I got to Smethwick, I was a victim of a group attack, an attempted kidnap. And also it was when I was first arrested. Now, this year was extremely traumatic for me, and I didn't really know how to embody the trauma that I was experiencing. When I say embody, because sometimes we need to really know and recognize where in the body this is coming from. And it birthed a lot of aggression, violent and pro-violent behaviors and attitudes within me, and I didn't really know how to zone in on my trauma. Now, the man I am today, I use creative outlets, and rather than internalizing these traumatic experiences, although to internalize your emotions is good at some points, but to express it in a very harmless way. That's not harmful to self. But one of those ways that I like to write poetry. I like to share with you a poem that I wrote for my grandma once I was really able to deal with the bereavement of her loss. So, how strange that all these influences and experiences guiding my pen from the realm of thoughts and imagination, yet I have neglected to have you among them. I wonder why I have committed such an offense, breaking my own moral law. I remember when this law was created, I was 14 years old, staring into a fatherless mirror, wondering why I couldn't cry. I think it was fear. Fear of not being able to honor your memory appropriately. Fear of unpacking that void you left in my heart unintentionally. A void where seeds of strength now grow, like grass growing out of black abandoned refugee bags. I never got to speak to you as a man, and I think that's the hardest expression to swallow. I used to imagine asking you about girls, jobs, career paths, or asking you what football team should I play for. That empty space is now hollow. Regardless of whether rainy or sunny days, coming to your house and sitting on your knee was my favorite thing to do come 3:15. Banana porridge, brown stew chicken, rice and peas, toto, toast, dumpling and tea. I wonder if these were our favorite family meals, or were they the result of cheap street deals, or a delicacy we, your grandparents perfected on a slave plantation of Jamaica. They were tasty all the same, regardless of how they came. The trauma remains real. However, I'm going to be the one to change the family narrative and the family slave name. So your strength and love didn't die in vain. So I shared that with you because for me now, how I deal with traumatic events or even stressful situations is I write. I like to write them out and kind of take them out of my body. And before that, I was very, very violent and chaotic in regards to how I responded to bereavement. Because after that, as I read out the ancestral gratitude earlier, all of those people had died in concession between a short space of time. Now, among that journey, not once did I ever think, you know what, I need therapy. Or not once did I think I'm going to speak to somebody because I feel like I need to show my emotion. Because where I come from, Birmingham, England, fully gang culture, pro-violent attitudes. We never even once thought we was going to speak about our emotions. And even if we did, we thought it was weak. So here in this slide, I've stated, Black bodies are locked out of the therapy room by a white shadows of the opaque coloniality, meaning we as young Black boys say, big man don't cry. We used to say, big man don't cry. So we just pull up our socks and carry on. Now that's harmful to ourselves and our surroundings. But in addition to that, the therapy room itself is locked to us because they don't want help. And when you provide the space, they don't want to talk. That came from a psychiatrist. A literal white psychiatrist stated that the Black people or Black men don't want to talk when they come to therapy. So the door's shut on both ends. So between the age of 14 and 20, we lost so many people. Like I said, I read them out at the start of the journey. And I developed a lot of negative coping strategies, substance misuse, selling drugs. I used to carry a machete around like it was a phone. I literally had such a negative lifestyle looking backwards, but at the time it was absolutely normal. So at 20 years old, like 22 years old, sorry, a year and a half after my baby brother died in a car accident, and my friend killed himself 2 weeks before my baby brother died, I was arrested for a very violent offence and convicted for 4.5 years. Halfway between that jail sentence, I then escaped, to be fair, absconded, and then went to attack somebody else with murderous intent. That led me to being sectioned. And here you can see on the photo on the left is me coming out for a day release, and that's my little cousin. And the photo next to that is me some years after my release. As you can see, a clear development of love of self and re-embodiment of dealing with one's trauma in a more effective and harmless way. Now, the photo on the right is still a couple of years later, where you can clearly see what I would term the embodiment of hypermasculinity. And I put a question there: why do most British Black men embrace masculine behaviors? Now, within my thesis, there's something called social dominance theory, which states that we, of subordinate male groups, we are subjected to certain kind of ways of being whilst under the hegemonic kind of dominant discourses of patriarchy. For instance, one of them is behavioral asymmetry, which is we literally mirror the behaviors of patriarchy even though we're under it. And also we tend to latch onto things that make us feel like we are men. And sometimes those things can be harmful. Misogyny, aggression, violence, and what have you. Now, present day, how I deal with traumatic situations: solo traveling. I love to be with self, literally love to be, not in an antisocial manner, but in a way that I love myself that much. I need to go and see the world and engage with different cultures and different people, meet new people in different cultures, like I stated there. Being in nature, that's another one as well. I feel like we as African descendants of African people, we have forgotten our connection to nature, like big and serious. So when I was younger, if a man said to me, "Oh, I'm gonna go wild swimming or hiking," I would say he's an idiot. Literally, we've lost all these ways of being. So today I go hiking, while camping, swimming. But a big one, a big one is to forgive my violent, traumatized young self, because it took me so many years to forgive myself. I was so remorseful for all the pain I'd caused the people close to me, to other people I didn't even know, the harm I've caused. I was very remorseful, but I didn't forgive myself. I also meditate and remain present. And like I said, creative outlets are a very, very powerful way to help one to not deal with, but manage the traumatic situation that they're going through. For me, I like to read now. And also, I say now because when I was younger, I couldn't stand it. I also like to write poetry. To be fair, I just like to write. Some people call it poetry. I just like to be creative. I try to paint. I say try. So I like to be creative. And self-dating. What I mean by self-dating, now check this out. Imagine how you treat your partner, how you treat your friend. Do you ever think to yourself, do you treat yourself the same way? So I literally take myself to the cinema on my own. I take myself to cafes on a nice sunny morning or something, and I'll have a book and I'll read. I'll treat myself to a little cake or something like that. Self-love and self-care. These are the embodiments of strength for one to not only manage the traumatic experience one's been through, but then also to help others to do the same. Because if your cup is empty or even half full, then you can't really support people effectively. Hence why I said self-love. So it starts with us before anything else or anyone else. And that's not being selfish. I mean in an altruistic manner. Because if you can look at yourself deep within yourself and know yourself and love yourself, then you are the embodiment of love, and it's just going to spread. That's what I found in my experience. So lastly, being kind and caring to yourself. Being kind and caring to myself and being kind and caring to yourself is the most powerful tool one can do to engage in social justice, to engage in a collective healing of trauma, because it's a collective thing as well. We're going for a collective trauma right now. Does that make sense? So like I said, we are more than our experiences. We are literally more than our experiences. And lastly, I am because we are. And I've forgotten to put a timer on, so I don't know what time I've got left. And it's a big topic for me to talk about in regards to trauma and how Black men are to be seen and heard in regards to their trauma. Because like I said, and I could resonate with Lamar, who spoke earlier, and he said his brother went to prison for 10 years. I know people that go into jail, have been to jail, and I went to jail. And yeah, we need spaces for Black men to come together to be able to heal and be able to speak and not feel like therapy is making them feel weak. Hence why my thesis, I'm hoping to create safe spaces for Black men to come together to heal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Augustus. What a real transformation. What an awesome transformation and of a story of your own life story. Well done. Thank you so much for being so blunt with us and sharing your story from where you are, from where you were to where you are now. We're also so very proud of you, and thank you for sharing. A round of applause for Augustus, everyone. And we have time for questions for Augustus. Just let me go through the chat to see if I can navigate through all the conversations going there to see what the questions are for you. Here's the first one from Janet. How would you change the concepts for young Black boys before things get heavy?
So when you say change the concept for young Black boys, you mean their perspective or the concepts of young Black boys? I'll answer both of them. For me personally, I think for young Black boys, they need to realize that the cocoon and the containing space of what I term as the colonial concrete jungle, it's bigger than that. There's a bigger world, because sometimes when we're in that space, we don't think that there's anything outside of that. It's always right. We're here now with the man. Then there's nothing else apart from that. It's to broaden the horizons of these young boys and the concepts of road life is not just life. There's life outside of the inner city. There's life outside of the Mandan. There's life outside of possible pro-violent families as well. Because gang life is not just about people you don't know. It's probably people you're so close with and you love. So it's about changing the concepts of these young men, their perspective of life, and knowing that their horizons are much broader than what they currently experience.
It's great. I think you answered the question very well, and I hope that's exactly what they were asking. Anne-Marie, I see your hand raised. You can go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Anne-Marie, Stephanie.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just texting the message as well. It's Augustus, is it? Yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I did write something in the chat already. Oh gosh, my Uber's here as well. I'm going out to have a good time myself. What did I wanted to say? It's so great, and I praise you for doing the work on yourself. Many don't. I've got family who went to prison, nephew that went to prison, brother went to prison, and they've come out very good. But I'm praising you because you've done the work on yourself. Many don't and continue the same silly ways, but you're great. You're lovely. You sound like a lovely person. Somebody I'd want to go out with. Thanks very much. Thank you. Well done.
Well, we can make the connection through Speak Black Man. Enjoy your night out, Anne-Marie. Enjoy your night out, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Thanks.
Not sure if this is Cupid Central, but okay, we'll make Augustus, here's one from Daryl that says, no mention of father. Was he present? And if not, how much did that impact you?
See, that's a good question. So I'll try and be very concise. That's a big topic. So he was not present. The first time I saw my father, I was 8 years old, and he rubbed me on the top of my head and walked into my grandma's house. And I'm thinking, oh, who's that? And then my grandma goes, are your father that? And he said, hello, son. And that was it. So my father was never present. Although that didn't impact upon me because I think my mum's here now as well. Something called parentification. So I was the man of the house, not just in the term man of the house. I literally was. So I had to grow up very, very quickly to support the people in my household. So not having a father, strangely to society, didn't affect me like that, because in my mind as a young man, I was so put in a space of responsibility that him didn't come into my head, because he was like he was a drug, he was on road. So yeah. Interesting.
All right, there's a question from Derek, which I'm going to read, but first I'm going to go to, is it Dion Kelly? Who has his hand raised? Go on, Dion.
You're on mute, brother.
We can't hear you. I don't think your microphone is connected because you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. All right, fix that, and then I'll come back to you. Derek is asking you, Augustus. Thanks, Augustus. I'm really, really pleased that there are other Black males within PhD programs. We need this to legitimize our voices and experiences. Question. In terms of coloniality of gender or even language, the idea of hyperpersonalities, example, masculinity, do you think this term perpetuates who and what Black men are and how we are seen?
What, coloniality? The
Yes.
term
Coloniality of gender, yes.
That's a good question, and the answer is yeah. I would say yeah, because the fact that we're looking into the coloniality of gender, it automatically makes you think of subordinate males of non-white categories straight away. Coloniality of gender. So the answer is yes, I do think that. And for me to reiterate that is to not even look at the colonial ways of being. Recently, I've come across something called affirmations methodologies, which is a Caribbean way to research, and I started to bring in mashup research and liming research, which is going against colonial and decolonial or decolonializing academia. Rather than decloning anything, leave them over there, we'll do our own thing. Does that make any sense?
Does to me, because I know very well about what you're saying.
All right.
I hope it does to Derek. Derek, if that answers your question, do let us know. Dion Kelly, you fixed your mic. Go ahead
Okay,
and ask.
I think I'm good now, right? Okay, cool.
Yes.
Mr. Augustus, thank you so much for your testimony. We really do appreciate it. The question from me is, how do you think those ideas of healthy Black masculinity could be reflected overseas? I know you talked a lot about the British Black male experience, but I feel like those spaces are very important too with the American context, right? Because I host my own platform to have those conversations here in America. So how do you think those similar practices and ideas can be reflected upon like other countries, especially the American culture?
Excuse me. For me, I'm a big advocate for like, I'm so unorthodox and non-conformist. Meeting the group of individuals who you're trying to support where they are. When I say meet them where they are, like currently I'm looking at creating safe spaces for Black men to come together and speak within barbershops, because I'm sure most of us can resonate that. Where do we hear therapeutic talk? You go to a barbershop, they start gossiping about whatever, do you know what I mean? And then they start to reason, what we Jamaicans call reasoning. So I feel, to answer your question, Dion, I don't know if you, I don't know what sort of groups of Black men you're looking at to support, but wherever these groups of Black men reside, or meet them where they are. If it's a front room, go meet them in the front room. Create a space for them in a comfortability and confidentiality for them to feel like, okay, cool, we're here. It's nothing different apart from we're now connecting. Does that make any sense?
Go to the church. Lots of them are in church.
If they're religious, then go to the church. Be dead serious.
Meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Go to the sports centers. Go to on the football field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. 100%.
Go find them. Augustus, thank you so much. I don't know if this, Kerry, you've sent something very long, and I don't know if it's a question. So I'm going to try to read it, and if it's a question, you answer it. So, and then this is it for you, Augustus. It says, as a therapist myself in the States, I rarely see Black male clients enter the space for therapy. I truly appreciate this space and to know that this platform is reinforcing and normalizing the importance of doing the work on self and not allowing the stigma to create barriers for personal growth. We need more Black men in this space. Oh, well, it's not a question. Thank you for that, Kerry. And we're happy that this is going global and changing our spaces, not just in the UK, but in Canada, in America, in Switzerland, in Jamaica, in Zambia, wherever else. We're taking this global. Thank you, Augustus, for that transformative life story. And we really are proud of you and glad that you are changing the space and narrative in academia for Black men. More blessings to you. Thank you. That was Augustus Reed, everyone. And we are moving on. This has been amazing so far. Like with every Speak Black Man conference, we have a segment called On the Rise. Really, really love this bit of Speak Black Man conference. And let me tell you what On the Rise is about. So this segment is just designed to help highlight mental health service or work being done in our community. The aim of this is to shine the spotlight on great work being done and to encourage others to get involved. Over the past year, the Speak Black Man collaborated with 2 great trainee clinical psychologists to research Black men. And today, they will highlight their work. The first will be Ellis Brooks. Ellis is a 3rd-year trainee clinical psychologist at the University of Surrey, completing 2 papers for her doctorate research. Firstly, experiences of racism from mental health services for Black people with psychosis for her empirical study. The second paper is a systemic review on Black people's experiences of racism in psychological therapies. We're going to hear now from Ellis Brooks about her work. Hi, Ellis.
Hi, thank you. I hope you can all hear me okay. It's a pleasure to speak with you all today about my research. In particular, I'm just going to be focusing on my empirical paper, so the piece of research that I've been conducted in collaboration with Speak Black Man. So thinking about the reflexive thematic analysis. So I guess a bit about why I wanted to do this research is probably important to name. So when I first started my clinical career, I started working in a kind of inpatient unit for young people. And that was when I really first witnessed a lot of the racism and discriminatory mistreatment that this population in particular experienced. And I always thought when I got to doctorate level research, this was always something that I wanted to kind of dedicate to that population. And I guess in terms of kind of having the privilege of collaborating with SpeakBlackMan, that's been such an honor, and particularly with the kind of recruitment and data analysis stages. So I guess I was looking at two things. So my research questions were, firstly, how have Black individuals with psychosis experienced racism within mental health services based in the UK? And secondly, what could be done to improve the mental health experiences for these individuals, so Black people with psychosis? So I did most of the recruitment kind of via social media. If not, it was via kind of emailing organizations, and also SpeakBlackMan kind of sharing within conference spaces, which got the kind of successful recruitment of 8 participants, which was done through interviews, so kind of semi-structured interviews. And in the sample, we ended up having 5 men, 2 women, and 1 non-binary participant, and they were aged between 19 to 28. So I used reflexive thematic analysis to kind of draw on themes, which is a technique or a kind of principle used by Bourne and Clark, which found 3 interconnected themes. So the first one was around layers of discrimination, thinking about discrimination and kind of the intersectionality of the individual, but also taking into consideration the systemic context of where the individual was facing that discrimination. So that kind of brought into 2 sub-themes of kind of participants' understandings of discrimination and also the biases and assumptions that they experienced. So a few participants had additional aspects of their identity which they felt amplified discrimination, whether that was related to lived experiences of substance use or English not being their first language, or also being part of the trans community. And they felt that that kind of influenced and intersected with also being Black and having psychosis. And then the second theme was around the impacts of racism, which kind of drew into 3 sub-themes around healthcare negligence. So that kind of came under a delay in treatment, not even being given the right to access treatment, not being treated accordingly. And then impacts on the self, so psychologically and in kind of implications around coping, and also systemic impacts, so the impacts that the racism had on, and discrimination more widely had on others in their community, in their system, and also kind of existing in the system after experiencing those really horrible effects from mental health services. And then the third theme was more around a need for cultural humility, which kind of drew into 3 sub-themes around empathy, advocacy, and knowledge. And I guess to touch on those a little bit more, it wasn't necessarily people were saying, oh, I wish it was like this. It did also cover things of the care that maybe people felt that the healthcare professional just lacked understanding and couldn't really connect with their cultural stories. So I guess that's one kind of thing that really drew from the themes in terms of how we could better support Black people with psychosis from kind of a mental health system perspective. So it felt like there was a need for kind of relatability to the healthcare professional, whether it was due to shared identity or just the healthcare professional taking time to understand the person and their stories, just to build rapport and connection. So connection came up a lot, and also this idea around kind of comfortability and not feeling comfortable. You know, a lot of people shared, at least 4 participants shared, they were always asked where they were from, and people from the mental health systems just didn't understand that they were Black British. So it was just not appropriate to be asking. So there was also kind of a need for advocacy from healthcare professionals. So in particular, thinking about psychosis, and we know there's a huge need for early intervention, and it'd be a condition that can deteriorate quite quickly. And because of a lot of the racial mistreatment, a lot of people weren't getting referred onto services and actually ended up having worsened outcomes in terms of their psychosis. So actually needing inpatient admissions because community services didn't act in time. And finally, thinking about kind of how mental health services in terms of that knowledge aspect are very Eurocentric and westernized. And it's not a lot of things. I mean, even as someone who works in mental health systems, I think they're still quite complex to navigate. So let alone what that says for other people, for example, the Black community and this population. So kind of being given the knowledge on how to navigate services so that they can end up kind of receiving better healthcare and mental health outcomes. And I'm sorry that was such a quick overview about my research. I could obviously talk for hours about it because I'm so passionate about it. But yeah, if you want to kind of know more about it when it's going to get published and things, when it's more finalized, feel free to add me on LinkedIn and you'll get more updates there. And thank you so much for listening to my research.
Amazing stuff. So proud of you, Ellis, and all the best as you continue this research. Thank you so much. And Ellis's information is on the screen now if you want to find her on LinkedIn and also contribute to her research towards her doctorate research. Thank you, Ellis. The next on the rise for this segment will be Sade Louise Fergus, and she's a clinical psychologist with interest in community psychology, social justice, and social change. Her research interests include participatory action research, qualitative research, and approaches rooted in community and empowerment and liberation. Sade, welcome, and please share with us what you've been doing in the space.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I just wanted to share some research that I did in collaboration with SpeakBlackMan. So what we did for the research is we focused on Black fathers and we focused on their experiences of raising Black sons in the UK. And so what we did in this research is, again, just thinking about decolonial lens, is we used an African psychology perspective the whole way through the research. So I guess often in research, you might compare the sample to existing research, which are often white populations. But in the research we did, we centered everything on the Black experience. And we really highlighted that throughout the research. We used African psychology principles in how we researched this topic. So what we did is we had a group of 10 Black fathers, and what essentially the Black fathers did is they came together in a group and just spoke about their experiences of raising sons. I also used a method called participatory action research, which meant that the Black fathers were involved in the designing of the study. They decided the questions that they were going to ask. They decided the focus. So actually, I just went to Black fathers and just asked them what was on their mind. And actually, all of them said that what's on my mind is raising my sons. And they felt that that was a really pertinent topic for them. And in terms of just kind of the main findings that I wanted to share is that I guess some of the main findings were that Black fathers were saying that their experiences in the world and in how they raised their sons were impacted by both their gender and also being Black. They felt that they had a lot of experiences of racism, but also related to their gender. So there was something specific about being a Black man, but also being a young Black boy, which affected their experiences in the world. And in terms of raising their sons, what they really wanted to do is to help their sons to navigate the world, essentially. And actually, when we compared this to raising their daughters, one of the men came up with the saying that they want to protect their sons from the system, but safeguard their daughters from men. So that was the kind of their whole experience of raising their children. So a lot of what they wanted to do is to teach their sons to navigate racism, but to do it in a way that they wanted to educate their sons about racism, tell them about it from a very young age, and give them the education and the tools to fight back against racism, but in fact using their words, not to use violence and not to play into stereotypes, but how they can let their sons see beyond the stereotypes that were given to them. A lot of Black fathers had shared this kind of narrative about Black fathers being absent, not being around for their children, and just really felt that things in the media, whether it be films, whether it be series, they kept really perpetuating that stereotype, and daily they felt that they had to show up for their children, and actually found that it was almost like people were surprised when they were there for their children. And what we highlighted is actually there is a lot of research that says that Black fathers are passionate about their children. They are around for their children, actually in some occasions, more so than white fathers. And we spoke a lot about how you don't hear about that in academia, in movies. They don't want to portray Black men as those loving fathers, essentially. Another thing that I thought was really important in this research is Black fathers kind of have this stereotype that they don't want to speak, that they kind of don't want support. But actually what the Black fathers in my research were saying is that they did want to speak, but they wanted to speak in places that were safe. They wanted to speak in groups with other Black men. So actually they kind of didn't want those one-to-one, maybe therapy interventions. What they wanted was interventions rooted in community that were about bringing like-minded Black men together and kind of speaking through the issues with each other, essentially, getting advice from each other and kind of really uplifting each other. That was what was really important to Black men. And a lot of them spoke about how if they could then emulate that and do that with their sons, how that could actually have so many positive ripple effects for the Black community as well. So I guess not only kind of in our research did we cover the kind of stories and the counter narratives that Black men had to offer, we also thought about the interventions and the support that the community needs. And obviously just wanting to continue with that to see what changes we can make. I will be presenting my research at upcoming psychology conferences, but also publishing the research. So when I do so, I'm sure I can share it with Antonio to share with anybody who would like to read it. But yeah, obviously it is my research, but I would really recommend it. And I think also it just shows that in academia, you can really do something that centers on Blackness, and you don't have to use white-centered frame of references, and you can actually do things from a decolonial lens that are rooted in African and Caribbean and Black cultural values, and really push it through and get it through academia as well. So that's also a point of why I wanted to do this research, just to really highlight that as well. So yes, when it is published and available, I'll be happy to share it with everyone.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Excellent research, Antonia says, and I do agree. I do agree. Some great work being done in our community, some great work being done by our young people, changing the narratives to how we live, to how we see ourselves, and to how we treat with our families and our emotional and mental well-being as well. So thank you, Sade and Ellis, and we wish you both all the very best in your research and hope that it will go into places that will change our lives forever. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming very soon to the end of SpeakBlackMan Conference, but right now we'll be sending a survey in the chat. I'm just going to ask that every one of us just take the time to complete the questionnaire. We want to improve what we do. We want to make sure that next year when we go physical and take this global, that we are thinking about the things that you want to hear and thinking about ways that we can improve the SpeakBlackMan Conference. So definitely complete that survey and give us your feedback. Let the team know exactly how they can change things or do it better, and how you can be of support as well. So complete the survey that's now in your chat. We want to say thanks right now to some special people who have been helping us to make this conference a success. Thanks to Plain Vision Agency, the dynamic duo of Aidan and Naomi. They really are visionary, and everything that's been happening on here today, it's because of their technical support, their vision in the background, making it visually representative of the global brand that's the SpeakBlackMan. And so we thank Plain Vision for being a part of the SpeakBlackMan Conference for the 4th year in a row and making sure that we have everything going smooth, sound, visual. Thank you, Aidan and Naomi Bailey. Now then, it's time to welcome our final speaker for the SpeakBlackMan Conference. And this is Dr. Noreen Dara. And she's a senior clinical psychologist, associate academic fellow, a clinical lecturer, and an independent research consultant. Her clinical focus is on providing culturally relevant therapies for marginalized communities, particularly young Black men. She'll be speaking on her project that explores the narratives of imprisoned young Black men participating in a group coaching program titled The Black Hero's Journey, followed by individual coaching sessions provided by Black coaches. These sessions focus on their history and heritage, self-identity, dismantling self-limiting belief, and future aspirations. Together with their peers, they explore the narrative surrounding their lives, their vulnerabilities, and the challenges they face in constructing their preferred identities in a world filled with limiting stereotypes and ideas about them. Speak Black Man Conference 2024, please help me welcome Dr. Noreen Dara.
Thank you, Aureo, for that wonderful introduction.
Great.
I'm going to be in dialogue with Antonio, so
I'm going
Antonio sort of open the
I'll be
platform. But
I'll be interviewing Dr. Noreen, and she has been very instrumental to the work that we do here at Speak Black Man. I remember when I was looking into research that were being done on Black men mental health, I came upon her work in 2021 and the amazing research that she did with Black men accessing psychological therapy. And the research had some really wonderful outcome. You can take some time out to look at her research. It's all over the internet. You could just type it into Google and you'll find it. But our research really helped me to think about the work and what we really want to achieve as Speak Black Man, which is to support Black men to access psychological support. Now, what the evidence suggests is that Black men are least likely to access psychological support and are most likely to access any kind of psychological support within the prison system. Since Dr. Noreen completed this research, she has been working within the prison system, and she has been championing this work with the eras within the prison system. And today we want to interview her and kind of get some more insight into the research that she's done and her findings so far. So let's start by just introducing yourself to us and tell us about your journey with the work that you've been doing.
thank you, Antonio. I think you've already done a really good job of spotlighting how we came to meet and how this work has come to be. And I think it really goes back to my time working as a psychological well-being practitioner, and I was providing psychological therapies within the community. And at the time, I was working in a service that was in one of the most culturally diverse parts of the UK. But unfortunately, within my time of working within that service, bear in mind, I'd treated over 300 people within my time. I had only ever come across one young Black man. And in that, even in the event of him coming, he never completed his therapy. So I was always sort of concerned about the lack of access, the lack of resources, the lack of opportunity, knowing that there was such a need within the community. So driven by this curiosity and concern, I took it upon myself to investigate what was going on within the service, to understand this gap. And that revealed the disparity in access. And it was really difficult sort of highlighting these disparities in a service that perhaps had many blind spots about the needs within the community. And I actually felt quite depleted because at the time I wasn't able to carry that project to its fruition because of multiple systemic barriers put in the way. So actually, just like Ellis, I took it upon myself to take this forward as a doctoral project, which Antonio mentioned, which was the sort of psychological, sort of looking at the experience of Black men accessing psychological therapy. I guess I wanted to reframe this narrative by looking at the stories and the experience of men who actually engaged with services, just to think about their journey, what worked, what didn't, and lessons learned. Because I think often within academia, the narrative is often about those who don't engage. What I wanted to find out is about those who do engage and what we could learn from them. And that project really took a life of its own, and it really resonated in the community. It really started to shift some narratives, thinking about how we can engage with Black men in a way that's therapeutic, transformative, and also in a way that is accessible and appropriate to them. And you know what happened? Off the back of that research, Anton, I think I presented at the conference at the Speak Black Man, the very first one in 2021. just sort of a year after I did that project, I received an email from a big organization, and they were looking to commission a researcher to go into prisons to find out the experience of young Black men who were sort of engaging in rehabilitative programs. And I remember at the time reading that email and thinking, this must be a scam. I don't know who's emailing me. How do they know my name? They seem to really align with my passions. I was quite frankly honored, but at the same time quite skeptical. And I did follow up on that email. And upon speaking to the commissioners, I felt so honored and so seen because often we do this work as legacy work, and it doesn't always have the visibility we hope for. But in this instance, the work had sort of reached the academic community, and there was a real interest in commissioning Black researchers, Black academics to go into prisons and explore the untold stories of young Black men. And this is how it came to be. I initially was commissioned to be a researcher. All they wanted me to do was to go and interview these young men about their experiences of the Black hero's journey, which I'll come to later. But as the project evolved, and I was able to bring my expertise, my experience, my confidence, my passion, I evolved from being an interviewer all the way up to a lead investigator. And now pleased to say that I was the lead author of a project that is going to be released next week. And you hopefully land in your spaces thinking about how we create safe spaces for young Black men to be visibilized, to be seen, and also think about what approaches can really help them to transform their lives. So yeah, that's a bit about my story.
Oh, absolutely amazing. I mean, your passion, your drive, I'm not surprised of the opportunity that came up for you. But what I'd love to also take away from this is, what would you say were the main findings from the project that you've started doing within the prison system?
So I'll just start by giving a bit of context so our audience and everybody here present knows a bit about why, sort of the Black heroes is important and why it's necessary when we're thinking about the UK context. So just as a question, Antonio, I just want you to guess. As of March 2024, when we look at the statistics, about 15% of the prison population in England and Wales are young adults. And of that percentage, there are people who are from Black and mixed ethnic minority background. Just as a guess, or maybe you might already know this, what percentage of that 15% do you think are Black men? And I can also ask the
I think it's
audience, guess, if you can also put your guesses or put your, what percentage or ratio, percentage, I guess, what sort of percentage do you all think? If we think about 15% are young men, of that 15%, how many of those are from a Black background? Or Black prisoners in general? Do we have some in the chat?
Yeah, we have.
I'm just really curious.
We have 7, we have 10, we have 14. We have 15, we have 75, 85%.
Yeah. There's a lot
54.
really close up guesses. I mean, I'm surprised somebody said 15% because that would mean 100%, which would be a totally crazy statistic. But actually, as of March 2024, 15 of the 15% of young adults in prison, 12% of those are Black. And yet Black people only represent 3% of the general population. Now, if you do some quick maths, that is a dire state. What this says is that Blackness is associated with criminality, or there's something about being Black which leads to one being a criminal, but we know that this is not right. There is something about the social conditions, the systematic discrimination, the lack of opportunities, the sort of racism. All of these systemic barriers are present in the lives of young Black men or young Black prisoners, which result in them being found on the extreme end of the mental health spectrum, the education exclusion spectrum, and subsequently the prison sort of and of course in prison. So when we think about these statistics, there's a real recognition for the need for focused, targeted interventions to address the unique challenges that they face, including discrimination and prejudice. So this is where the Black Heroes Journey comes in. It's a program that's designed specifically for young Black men in prison. And we know that often when it comes to mental health provision for Black men in the general population, it's quite poor, culturally inappropriate, non-responsive, and oftentimes there's a lot of stigma when it comes to accessing services. So within prison, the context of the situation is even worse. So what the Black Heroes Journey tries to do is to at least close that gap. It's a coaching program that's provided within a group context, and it's 4 structured sessions, each lasting around 2 hours. And the sessions provide a blend of group discussions, interactive activities, self-reflections. All of these exercises are aimed at fostering a sense of community, belonging, and personal growth. And actually, if you think about those sort of the aims or the premises of those workshops, is about trying to provide something reparative, restorative, and healing for young men who perhaps haven't experienced that level of care, support, and belonging in the outside world. Okay. So the program itself is about helping young Black men to reconstruct their sense of identity, to understand more about their history and heritage, to think about stereotypes or limitations that are imposed upon them that then impact their own self-view, to help challenge some of these artificial rivalries, artificial conflicts that often lead to conflict within their local communities, to help them foster a sense of brotherhood, to be a crucible for vulnerability by thinking about characteristics that they possess. So all of that is happening within the context of the group session. And what is so special about that is it's driven and provided by Black coaches. These are Black coaches who are fathers, mentors, pastors who have experience in the community. And there's something about their representation which plays quite a reparative and foundational kind of representation for these young men who, for many, have come from backgrounds where they did not have a positive or constructive male role model. So that's what I just want to emphasize there about the space. So once we understand the context, then I want to really highlight some of the key findings. And there were so many amazing stories. And I just want to say how, you know, there's this common narrative that young Black men don't talk. But actually what I've found is that when given the space and the platform that feels safe, that feels honoring, that feels respectful, they have a lot to say. And it's powerful. And it changes hearts and minds. It closes that empathy gap that often exists within professions where there is a lack of understanding of one's position and story. And the key sort of themes that came up from these young men was prison reality is harsh. Not only do they have to navigate being a prisoner, which is already a stigmatizing position, they also carry other stigmatizing labels, whether it's being Black, being poor, so class background, having an educational disadvantage, and also for some, something about just how they present, whether they're tall, big, broad, all of those sort of layers lead to them being stereotyped, being targeted. They talk about this double bind, the double bind being they either try and make themselves small, which leads to them becoming inauthentic in how they interact in the prison world, or they might overcompensate as a way of protecting themselves from harm, whether it's from the prison guards or fellow peers. But either of those positions they take only lead to further harm, okay? And what they talk about is the necessity in code switching, that in order for them to survive the prison world, they constantly have to wear these masks. And these masks are designed to be a protective shield. But at the same time, what those masks do is strip them away from being who they want to be. They start to lose focus on their aspirations, who they want to be, who they aspire to be. So what they talk about is the importance of the Black hero's journey, because what it allows them to do is to strip away those masks and be vulnerable with other Black men, be seen by other Black men, and to start to recognize the similarities in their lived experiences. For example, there was one of the participants who talked about, by being in the space with other Black men, they started to kind of make connections about experiences with police, experiences with schooling, absence of fathers in the home. I guess those sort of painful life experiences which they had perhaps navigated as individuals could be brought into those spaces as a way of removing the shame and actually finding space to talk about it in a way that feels restorative and reparative and transformative. And another theme that came out quite strongly, Antonio, was the idea of self-limiting beliefs. A lot of the young men talked about how their lived experiences have led to them to internalize an idea of them being unworthy, being sort of not having aspirations, equating success to being white, not seeing themselves leaving the road life because they felt trapped. They did not see other alternative pathways for their lives. So what the Black Heroes Journey allowed them to do was to start to recognize their worth, not just by thinking about self-worth, but thinking about their history, where they hailed from, helping them to understand African history, not just the history that's taught in the classroom, but beyond the textbook. And actually, there was something that was so transformative about that, in the sense that they were starting to recognize the resilience of the people and the generations that came before them. And that allowed them to hold a mirror up to themselves and think about those untold stories, untold talents, untapped opportunities that they could sort of progress beyond life in prison. So there's something quite powerful about that. So yeah, I'll pause there just for you to reflect, but there was just so much about debunking, demystifying, and allowing people to unlock their potential, and the Black Heroes Journey providing a context in which all of these wonderful, empowering conversations could take place. And I found it quite moving, if I'm honest, because we're speaking to a population of people that are completely isolated from the world, but also, yes, we're not sanitizing their crimes. They have committed crimes. When you understand their story, understand their history, it's also quite sad that they're only learning about this for the first time in prison, right? So it's quite an indictment, I think, on society. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm the only one feeling some really strong emotions, especially as you share the statistics. It kind of really just brought on a whole lot of emotions for me. And also looking at the importance of having space like this. You know, when I think for me, when I started studying psychology in Jamaica, I was a police officer. And at the time, I really wanted to understand why people committed crime, because there must be factors that led to them being in prison rather than just me arresting them and putting them to prison. I wanted to take a more proactive approach. And what you're doing right now is a proactive approach to research and to kind of think about how to support these Black men to restore themselves so that they can thrive. So I want to say, thank you for all the hard work you're doing along with your team. It's so needed to give Black men hope, to know that they're heroes, and giving them a safe space, to transform their mindset for greatness. You've shared quite a lot about the work you're doing, and I'm sure others are feeling the weight. But what are some of the tools that you would say that, if you were to think of 3 tools that they could utilize from this study or research, what would you recommend those tools to be?
I interviewed 7 Black men, and I also analyzed the findings from 5 Black men who took part in a focus group.
And across all of their stories, there was something about the importance of tapping into Black joy. And I'm talking about that in the context, being able to tap into parts of themselves that help to reconnect with their inner child. There was a lot of stories of deprivation, stories of having to grow up earlier than their time. I think Augusta spoke about parentification and the lack of role models within the family and having to take up a lot of responsibilities, which also meant that they did not have an opportunity perhaps to experience the freedom, the expression, the creativity that a child can have. So there's something about them. If I had to give a gift to these young men or give a gift to Black men in general, and this feels particularly moving for me to speak about because I recently had my own little boy. He's 1 now. And I did this project whilst I was carrying him. And every time I met each of these young men, I thought about their parents who also once had dreams for them, parents who had aspirations for them whilst carrying my own child. And I thought, what gifts would those parents have given them and what hopes would they have had for them? And each and every one of them would have had a parent or a loved one who cared about them at some point. And the tools that I said that I would put in that box to help them progress is the Black joy, vulnerability being a strength, understanding this notion that vulnerability and strength are two sides of the same coin. So helping them to recognize that vulnerability actually empowers them to honor their needs and emotions. And it's through this vulnerability that they can genuinely care for their own well-being. Because when we live in a world that doesn't care about us, we can also become dishonoring towards ourselves. So I think for the young men, where they've had constant messages that they don't matter, that they don't, sort of have a place in this world, those messages become internalized and they become sort of dishonoring towards themselves. So I think vulnerability being sort of that coin in their toolbox can help them progress and develop that resilience and meet life's demands. And the last thing I would say is the power of strong, positive relationships. I'm not talking about immediate family. We know that in sort of the trauma literature, where children have experienced multiple adverse childhood experiences, one of the key factors that can reverse the damage of childhood trauma is strong, positive relationships, relationships that feel safe, relationships that feel consistent, and relationships that feel predictable can be really helpful for these young men. So in terms of spaces that allow them to build a sense of security, a strong attachment can really heal and rebuild that trust. And also reverse some of those early life experiences. So that could be a friend, a church member, it could be a brother, a sister, and sometimes outside of their network, it could be a teacher, it could be a lecturer. I think some of us might have people who are outside of our immediate family who've played quite positive roles in who we are today. And for these young men, it was the Black coaches. So I'm really heartened when I hear about the importance of having Black teachers, Black prison officers, Black therapists, because we need some of those relationships to help heal a generation of people that will be part of our tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing those tools that we as Black men, not only in the prison system, I mean, every Black man on here, and anyone is here, you need to have, utilize these tools. I think one of my favorite quotes is that vulnerability is actually your greatest strength, because sometimes we think vulnerability is a weakness, and that's what we've been socialized to think. But when you learn to be vulnerable in the right space and with the right people, then you recognize that you're actually cultivating a space for your healing and your recovery. I've been amazed amazed of your work from we've met, and I'm still even more amazed of what you're doing and what you continue to do and what you will do. What I want to ask you, because I know there are lots of therapists and persons in the psychology space here, and people who want to support the work that we're doing. what would you say has empowered you? What has been driving you to do this work? And what would you say to others who sometimes feel overwhelmed by the challenge that we face in our community? What would your encouragement be?
I mean, the main thing you've said there, Antonio, is this work is challenging. This work is depleting. The emotional labor that's required doesn't always necessarily return results. But one thing I want to say is that you never know what rooms your name is being mentioned. And that's my story. So when I did the initial project, it was all done from a place of passion and care for my community. And actually that then traveled further and led to this project that's allowing me to work at a very national scale. So I'm talking about the importance of ripples, that every little thing that we're doing in this space, in the sort of aim of advancing and raising the profile of Black mental health, it might not matter, or maybe we might not see the results in our generation, but maybe for my son's generation, we might be able to see the effects there. So my message, I'm getting a bit emotional, but my message to everybody is that we have to persist. This is legacy work and it will change lives. And we're already making changes by having these spaces. That to me is transformative enough. And for 86 people who are here today are connected to another 86 people and so on and so forth. And that's how ripples create big oceans. Yeah.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You are doing a fantastic job. And thank you for being a part of the Speak Black Man community. We value you and the work that you do. And we're here to support you along the way. All right. I'm not the host for today. I'm going to hand over to the host, Arroyo, who will ask you questions and take feedback. Thank you so much for having me, everyone.
Thank you, Antonio.
You could very well be the host. Well done. Well done. Very informative question and answer session there between two great minds. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Dara. Really, really appreciate the work that you're doing for the community. We have time for some questions for Dr. Dara, and Antonio is also still with us. So if the question goes to Antonio, please let me know. And if it's for Dr. Dara, then we can, of course, let her answer. So any questions, if you want to raise your hands and then you can unmute and then ask a question. I see one here from Augustus Reed, which says, how do we effectively support and keep young Black men safe when attempting to empower and evoke their vulnerability?
I think what matters is co-constructing spaces with them. So what I mean by that is being collaborative from the ground up. There's a lot of, if I think about one of the quotes from the young man, he spoke about how he never engaged in any of the prison rehabilitation programs because none of them actually asked him what he wanted or how he wanted to progress or what things would help him reach his personal goals. So there was a sense of agency being stripped of him. I guess it could be a debate because somebody's within a prison system. But if we're thinking about change, we're thinking about empowerment. Spaces need to be created for and with the young Black men. They need to be the main sort of subjects of their own story. And often what's happening within academia or within mainstream services is that there's this idea of what young Black men need, rather than actually going to where they are and asking what they do need. And there's something about also dismantling this idea that therapy needs to take place in a therapy room. You know, there's this idea that one sits on the other end and one sits on it. Perhaps therapy is going to take place in a therapy, in a barbershop, or you might need to do a podcast series. You might need to do a food event where people come and eat and you talk about mental health. I guess thinking about avenues of challenging the traditional way of providing care to Black men and young Black boys. They have the ideas, they have the tools, and they need our expertise. That's how I see it.
Support that. I definitely agree. And I'm not even in the field, but I definitely agree that that approach works. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask our host to spotlight all our other speakers. And then I'm going to use the next 5 to 10 minutes to open the floor for questions for all our excellent, amazing speakers that have been on today. So if you could spotlight all our speakers, Tishana, Augustus, Lamar, and then I'm going to open the floor now for questions from all of them. So if you have a question, you can raise your hands, or if you want me to read them, the chat function is open. Karisha?
Yes, a question for Augustus. And you may have mentioned this before. What was the turning point for you more specifically? Did you get to a place of being sick and tired of being sick and tired? Like, what was the turning point for you when you decided that I wanted to do the self-work and I'm tired of going through this cycle?
Honestly, it's when I was when I was sectioned, because the story around that is complex. So my point is, when I was in those particular spaces, I could see how what these places called patients were treated by all sorts of individuals. They were black, they were white. These were, and I thought to myself, when I come out, I'm gonna be that rude boy that challenged the narrative in the space, and I'm gonna try and be a clinical psychologist and see if I can then be in that space to then try to support those who really need it and are not getting that support. So the turning point for me was getting tired of vulnerable individuals being treated inhumanely, and me being one of them as well. So yeah, the clinical settings, it's I don't like it, but yeah, that's the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Let's see if any hands raised. There's a question from Dion Kelly in the chat, which says, for the speakers today, what approach should Black men take to address their trauma? So I'm going to start with Lamar on that. What approach should Black men take to address their trauma? Then Antonio, you can chip in on that as well.
Yeah, definitely, which was said, definitely just speaking and telling your problems to someone that you trust. Could be a therapist, family member, but speaking out goes a long way. And it's a process of healing.
And Antonio?
I think one of the things I've always said over the years is that your trauma is not your treasure. So you cannot treat your trauma like your treasure. You must first recognize that you need to start seeking support. And as Lamar said, creating that space to start speaking about the trauma. Because oftentimes with trauma, what happens is that we are not processing the trauma. So the memory of the trauma, we're still living in the memory, and we're not updating our minds. So I would say it's really one, start to recognize that you need help, you need support, you need an outlet. And one of the main things that this movement promotes is accessing psychological support. And if you need that support, we're here to support you. So help is available. We can direct you where you need to get support, or we can do the therapy ourselves.
And I'm going to ask Tishana to also comment on that. Tishana?
Right. I thought it was funny how you just went straight to ask the men. But yeah, I wanted to highlight a couple of things that were raised even today about how Black men can approach dealing with their trauma in terms of using creative expression and storytelling. I think Augusta spent a lot of time on that. So whatever your type of creative expression is, use that. I think physical fitness and movement is also very important. And I do see a lot of men when I go to the gym in Jamaica. I don't know what it's like over there in the UK. And okay, it's similar. And to draw on some of the things I shared, just education on our racial and historical trauma, so you can understand what is driving your actions as a man, as a father, as a husband, that kind of thing. Because I figure that the understanding, and during my work in the UK, 4.5 years, we did deal with a lot of men, and they created some safe spaces. I'm sorry, I can't remember any of them off the top of my head, but build safe spaces where men can share vulnerably, challenging some of the cultures around how men should express themselves. So just build those spaces where men can really express themselves and connect with each other.
Do you mean moving away from the stereotypes of toxic masculinity?
Yeah, so if a space where you need to cry, you need to express what is happening at home. Just imagine a man feeling overwhelmed with expenses, parenting, showing up as a husband, working. It's almost like if you're a man, you should just be able to function with all of that. There's no room for you to be overwhelmed, right? But you're human. You can be overwhelmed like anybody else. So just building those spaces where men can express themselves when they're having those feelings than thinking, oh, because I'm a man, I have to hide that. And then them hiding it now becomes more toxic. And then they become a menace to their families and eventually society.
Augustus, was I incorrect for using that terminology? I noted your response.
To be fair, I think we're talking about it now, because for me, I don't believe in toxic masculinity. I think that's society kind of just saying to a traumatized man that you are toxic. I think toxic masculinity is literally just men who are traumatized. They've been traumatized through early childhood experiences or even current experiences. Because remember, we navigate through white spaces, and we are constantly battling with racial battle fatigue and John Henryism and all these different things that we are as black men have to do as a singular entity. And I think to help, what was the question? To address their trauma, to educate the ones who don't know about these things, because we are now in academia, we are getting these terminologies. If we go back to the road and say to these young boys, oh, listen, this is what we're going through, you know, but oh my days. So I think it's about that, basically. Sorry. Yeah.
I love that. And I stand corrected. What's the correct terminology to use then?
Not a Eurocentric one.
All right, I love it. I love it. This is also learning for all of us. I hope we can make that change as we go on. All right, Daryl is asking, the last week of October is Black Introvert Week. Do any of you identify as an introvert? And if so, how do you navigate that intersectionality, being Black, introverted, and a survivor of mental ill health? Any of you? No introverts?
I think everybody's probably looking at me like, why is she answering? Introvert. But actually, I grew up as an introvert, and then because I found my confidence through public speaking, I ended up doing lots of extroverted activities as an introvert. And then I'm a Black woman. I can't speak from a Black man's perspective because I'm a Black woman, but the cultural expectation is that as Black people, you're to be resilient and strong, and and I feel like that is intensified for our men. So sometimes I find it challenging when I'm expressing my weaknesses and my struggles, because when you show up as strong and powerful, it's almost as though you can't have a challenge. So when I say I'm struggling with this, I have many friends who say, don't say you have ADHD, you don't. You're so amazing, you're so inspirational. But all of those things does not prevent you from having challenges. So, and in the Black community, strong Black almost always come in the same sentence. You know what I mean? So if you're strong, it doesn't mean that you can't struggle with something. So just to make sure that those narratives are not stopping us from getting the support that we want. And Augustus, it's okay to say toxic positivity. when we tell people, oh, it's gonna be okay. If you can facilitate making it okay, then do so. Because some of us who show up strongest when we present or wherever you see the strong people, when they're in a moment of weakness, they're most overlooked because people just assume that they're okay. By the way, I didn't know that there was an Black Introvert Week. That's very interesting.
Neither did I, but we learn every day. So
also World Adoption Day. November 9th is World Adoption Day for like children who are adopted.
Wow, interesting.
Black Man to be on.
Having moved to the UK, I realized that there's a day for everything, almost, basically. Okay, here's a question. How does faith allows, if at all, anyone to recover from trauma and to help them thrive?
I think Lamar kind of alluded to that earlier today in his presentation. I think trauma and therapy goes hand in hand in terms of change. And therapy can take different form for different people. Not everyone need therapy in which you got to go into a room and speak to someone in that way. If you look at African-centered kind of therapy, sometimes it's a community approach, sometimes it's a faith-based approach. And it's important that you find that outlet that works for you. And that's why we encourage therapy to be something that is adaptive and something that is culturally appropriate for a person. So you want to think about, you think that is going to bring you the best outlet to be vulnerable and to be yourself and to feel connected. And for some people, that's faith. Some people, starting a new commitment with their faith, like in Lamar's case, is baptism, led to him recognizing that need for change. And if you understand repentance in the faith-based, in the Christian community, repentance means it's a change, it's a turnaround. And that change, that rebirth process, for someone who really values that rebirth, can actually see it as a new beginning. And in the Christian perspective, it said, all things are passed away, behold, all things become new. So a person who is now taking on that new identity, that new outlook, changes themselves. They lay aside the weight and the things that they've been carrying by either talking to their person of faith or just giving it to God. But I've seen people recover through faith, and also having spiritual people that they talk to, and that helps them through navigating through it. So therapy takes different form. That's the most important thing to keep in mind. And people, what is valued, that's why therapists need to think about what a person really values. So if your faith is important to you, that needs to be conceptualized in therapy. You need to think about how to use that person's faith to support them through their healing. So that's one of the things we've been championing with the BABCP. How do we use a person's value system? So if faith is important to them, the faith needs to be in therapy. Otherwise, they're not going to be effectively changed, because what is important to them is not being used to treat or support them.
Perfect. Tishana, you wanted to come in on that?
Yes, very briefly. Somebody had said in the chat earlier that if 20 sessions alone of therapy would have deleted several years of trauma and caused me to just become a compassionate human being, not at all. 20 sessions of therapy alone could not have done it. There was also lots of sessions of prayer and fasting for those who are of the Christian faith, and positioning it in prayer to God. And that's a big part of what led to the turnaround that I had. So I just wanted to briefly add that. I know Russell has his hand up.
Thank you. Russell, Dr. Dara, did you want to comment on that? And
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you were.
very quick. Yeah, just very quickly, I wanted to also spotlight the fact that for a lot of the young men I interviewed, faith was a protective factor in terms of navigating hardship and also just finding their sense of purpose and meaning in life. A lot of them sort of found that as an avenue that allowed them to explore their own identity. So I think there's also an underestimation, even within mental health arenas, as Antonio says, about faith being a protective factor sometimes. And of course, for some people, it can also bring about other complexities, but it is something that really has to be centered. If it matters to the individual, it needs to be centered within that therapeutic framework.
Perfect. I have 1 minute for the rest of this question and answer session. Russell, go on.
1 minute? Are you sure?
I am very sure.
Well, listen, first of all, I need to say thank you to all of you for being here, for doing all of this. I'm here because an online connection with Antonio, I asked him a question. I said, is there any way that you could help those of us who are really allies to this whole situation? I'm in my late 70s, but I plan to still be here for a lot of years. How can I most effectively understand Black psychology? I've been a therapist for 40 years. I've also been a professional conductor, symphonic musician for 40 years. I'm also an introvert, but I talk to thousands. I know exactly what that feels like, Tashana. So my question is this: you do have a problem in both, I guess, all the expatriates or the diaspora from Africa. The problem is huge. You've got those of us who are willing to assist. We can't answer the question now, but please connect so that we can have an open discussion about how can those of us who say, I have 3 adopted sons. They're all sub-Saharan Black Africans. 2 from Rwanda. I own a home in the Gambia. Life is very different now than it was 30, 40, 50, or 400 years ago that created this problem. There are those of us who really want to do our very best to understand Black psychology in the diaspora, because it's very different. It's colonialized, but it's very different in actual Africa. So it's a huge subject, and please accept my congratulations for what you're doing and talking. I would hope to join you in London next year.
Thank you, Russell. Where are you talking to us from, just before we answer?
I'm in Sedona, Arizona.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. All right. So here's what I'm going to do, Dr. Nira and Augustus. I'm going to ask you both to answer him in 30 seconds each, so that we can properly go over my time of a minute. Dr. Nira first.
Was that me? Sorry, Dara.
Dr. Nira, I'm sorry.
Russell, thank you for being in this space. I think it's important to have people who are in a place of willingness, in a place of learning and edification. And I think part of your question, I guess, was what can we do? I think part of it is just being present, hearing the stories, connecting, but also doing your work as well as an individual. I guess thinking about your positionality. How do you see, is this a problem that is to do with our community? Is this a problem for the whole of society? It's not just a Black people problem. It's something that is too sort of intertwined. It's also about white allies acknowledging their own part in feeding into some of those harm systems and actually realizing that our liberation is bound up together, right? The liberation of Black people and the liberation of white people is bound up together. And I think once we understand that concept, we start to see this as a human project rather than one group of people need to save another. That's my answer for that one. But I'm just pleased that you're here and saying and sharing kind of your experiences. And there's a lot of work also that needs to happen on both ends of the spectrum. That's my take on that one.
Thank you. Augustus, your 30 seconds on this.
I don't need that long. Noreen, literally, I just echo exactly what Noreen said. I'm literally going to say the same thing. Just do the inner work yourself, but she articulated it much better than I could. Thank you very much.
All right, perfect. Listen, I have nothing further to say. We have 2 minutes remaining on this platform. I want to thank you all so much for staying on and for participating, for listening to the excellent presentations from all our guests today. They have been amazing, and it's been a pleasure to be your host for another Speak Black Man conference. Antonio is going to wrap up. He's going to tell you what the vision is. He's going to tell you what the plans are, and he's going to thank everyone. Thank you, everyone. A round of applause.
Wow. Wow, wow. What an incredible, incredible, incredible day. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm just so amazed with the outcome and also the level of conversation, the knowledge gained from today, and also the future for all of us as part of the Speak Black Man Conference. The fact that you're here today, you're part of our community. So thank you so much. Russell, I'm so amazed that you're here. I remember you having conversation with me a few years ago, and you're here. Thank you for all the support you give me on LinkedIn. And for everyone who supported the vision, really appreciate your time, your effort. You could be anywhere else doing anything else, but you have chosen to be here. So thank you so much for your time. Again, we planned the next year to meet you all in person. So whatever you're doing, start saving that £1, £2. If you're in the States, start saving. We want to see everyone in London. Someone said we need to have it in London. So let's make it happen. We want to see you. If you can support Speak Black Man, get connected. send us an email. We want to improve the work. We want to reach more people. We want to make more impact, and we want to grow together. Thank you all so much. We're out of time, but until next year, love you all and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank
See
you guys for joining. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see familiar faces from Jamaica joining as well.
Just want to say thank you to Khaleesi as well, and God bless you.
Yes, my amazing wife. Thank you, sweetie. Thank you for all the hard work, baby.
A big thanks to Antonio also.
Thank you, Russell.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks to Antonio.
Thank you, Tish. Thank you for always supporting.
Well done, Antonio.
Thank you.
As
Thank you,
usual.
bro.